Funding for NJ Spotlight News provided by the members of the New Jersey Education Association. Making public schools great for every child. RWJ Barnabas Health. Let's be healthy together. New Jersey Realtors, the voice of real estate in New Jersey. More information is online at njrealtor.com. And Orsted, committed to delivering clean, reliable, American-made energy.
Tonight on NJ Spotlight News, funding universal pre-K. Governor Murphy and lawmakers make moves today expanding access to free pre-K and kindergarten in the state.
This does not come cheap, but the payoff is extraordinary. What is the payoff? Most importantly, the transformation of these kids' lives.
Plus, an ICE raid at an Edison warehouse rattles the community as immigration advocates demand due process for detainees. Also, deportation trauma. Our mental health reporter followed one family dealing with the stress of deportation and the mental health toll raids are taking on immigrant communities.
For a lot of families and children that are experiencing a lot of raids, deportations, or arrests right now, or even the threat of them, they're really looking at issues of intergenerational trauma that will last long after this current administration.
And NJ decides. With a look ahead to the midterms, the race in District 7 is getting crowded as more Democrats try to take on Republican Congressman Tom Kean Jr. Can they flip the district blue? NJ Spotlight News begins right now.
From NJPBS Studios, this is NJ Spotlight News with Brianna Venozzi.
Good evening and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday night. I'm Brianna Venozzi. We begin with a few of today's top stories. First, more New Jersey kids will have access to free preschool and full-day kindergarten. Governor Murphy was at the Plainfield Early Learning Center today to sign 3 bills expanding early childhood education by making the state's current preschool funding formula written law and adding in terms so the government can afford to fund both existing and expanding programs in the long term. The administration today said the bills put New Jersey on track to provide free full-day kindergarten for every New Jersey family by 2030. The bills also extend contract terms for preschool providers from 2 to 3 years so they can grow their operation and reach more kids. More than half of New Jersey's school districts with elementary schools now offer free pre-K. Governor Murphy has made the program a priority of his administration by adding hundreds of millions in state funding, saying this today.
We're going to ensure that every parent in New Jersey will eventually be able to enroll their child in a high-quality pre-K program at no additional cost. The very future of our state, our economy, our workforce, our quality of life, you name it, hinges on the health, success, and well-being of our children.
Also tonight, scathing new accusations that the town of Irvington misused money meant to help people struggling with drug addiction on 2 Opioid Awareness Day concerts instead. A highly critical report out this week from the state comptroller's office alleges Irvington officials spent more than $600,000 in opioid settlement funds on the events, which took place in the summers of 2023 and 24. The report alleges the concerts were held without input from Irvington's own health and public safety officials, community groups, or residents who were on the front lines of the opioid crisis, and found the bulk of the money, more than $360,000, was steered toward a township employee who's a DJ. Irvington Mayor Tony Voss, who initially sued to block the comptroller from publishing this report, shot back today, saying, quote, "With all due respect to the OSC, they know nothing about my community and the people within it." Voss claims that township employees handed out opioid awareness booklets and connected residents with addiction treatment services during the events, calling it an effective way to reduce stigma in a predominantly Black and brown community. And in our Spotlight on Business report tonight, more help with managing your rising energy costs. It's just in time for the sweltering temperatures. Governor Murphy this week signed 2 new bills into law. The first requires gas and electric providers to notify customers how much their usage is costing throughout their bill cycles. Now, utilities will send either a text or email as part of the new Energy Bill Watch program on the 10th and 20th days of billing. So that way customers have time to cut back on energy use and avoid an unexpectedly high payment. The second law requires the Board of Public Utilities to study the effects of data centers on electricity costs. Research shows data centers use large amounts of power to process AI, and that's at least partly to blame for driving up higher generation and distribution rates for both residents and commercial customers. Electric bills started spiking in June by an average of $20 more a month after an annual auction by the grid operator PJM.
Support for the Business Report is provided by the Newark Alliance presents the 2025 Halsey Fest, featuring the vibrancy of Newark's Arts and Education District and Halsey Street. Halsey, a neighborhood built on hustle and heart. The 2025 Halsey Fest schedule is available at halseynwk.com.
An ICE raid at an Edison warehouse is sparking outcry from workers and immigration advocates after 15 to 20 people were reportedly detained on Tuesday by federal agents and taken to detention centers. Raven Santana was in Edison today speaking with workers and joins us with the latest. Raven.
Hi, Bree. We're outside of Alba Warehouse here in Edison, where on Tuesday, ICE agents conducted a raid and detained workers. Now, employees that I spoke with who arrived to work today say they're now concerned that this could happen again. Video from Tuesday shows ICE agents rounding up workers, checking immigration statuses at the Alba Wine and Spirits facility. Those cleared were given wristbands. Others without valid ID were zip-tied and loaded into waiting vans.
Where I'm working, everybody low. Everybody keeping low. But I'm straight, I'm good still. But unfortunately, not everybody gonna be on the same level. But we have to live.
Do you feel like people are in fear it's going to happen again today?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. I think so. Everybody's on the edge right now.
Reverend Seth Caperdale of the Reformed Church of Highland Park arrived on site during the raid and live streamed what he witnessed, including one man identifying himself as Diego, said agents eventually cleared him, but not before slamming him to the ground.
I was driving my car when I was in the middle of my break. And they made me walk inside the building. They was pushing me. They was harassing me. When I told them to keep their distance, they put me down the floor and handcuffed me. Then they brought me down. They noticed that I was legal, but they was still running my whole record to try to catch me or something.
When we got there, we walked to the back and found tons of U.S. Border and Customs Patrol vehicles, as well as ICE vehicles, mostly white, big men with their faces covered and lots of guns and handcuffs. But we have a hotline that people call when they're in traumatic situations with immigration. Since yesterday, 11 different families representing 11 people who were taken yesterday have called our hotline, desperate for help with legal services, desperate to help think through what they should do next, desperate to wonder who else in their family might be at risk. The trauma created by yesterday, we're experiencing it in the calls that have been coming through all yesterday afternoon and this morning.
Reverend Caperdale says his church hotline has been overwhelmed with calls from families urgently looking for legal resources and comfort.
I know by the time I got back to the church here yesterday, 3 hours after being at Alba Warehouse, a woman came in and said, I watched your Facebook Live. That was my husband's place of work. One of the people that was taken was my husband. And this is somebody who lives in this town and whose kids are the same age as my kids. They've been here 27 years. They've been big contributors to the school and the community. And I know the husband very well. He's been at that job for 10 years. I was there long enough yesterday to watch families start to arrive once they heard that mom had been taken.
What is the biggest request now?
Lawyers, understanding the legal system, because sometimes family members don't understand what's next or what steps to take to be able to get their family members out of detention centers.
Jamie DiNicola, an attorney with Dyer Legal Services, is helping advocates like Caperdale and Castaneda navigate their next steps. Do you think it's going to get worse?
Absolutely. It's going to get worse. I mean, look at the bill that just passed, the quote unquote big, beautiful bill. I think there was like billions and billions of dollars of increases in the funding for ICE. So really what we're seeing now, I think, is just the beginning of what's going to be a really huge influx of fascist political apparatus that's trying to strip our country of due process.
Governor Phil Murphy addressed the situation briefly today, but offered few details.
Obviously, I've said time and time again that we don't pursue the inverse of that model. We don't stand in the way of federal authorities doing their work, frankly, and we cooperate with them all the time. But beyond that, I have no insight into the Edison situation yesterday.
It still remains unclear whether those detained are being held at Delaney Hall or the Elizabeth Detention Center. ICE has not yet responded to our request for comment. For now, workers and families remain in limbo, worried that Tuesday's raid may just be the beginning. For NJ Spotlight News, I'm Raven Santana.
Yeah, and ramped up ICE raids aren't just having an impact on businesses, but also on the mental health of immigrant communities and their families. Advocates tell NJ Spotlight News the chronic uncertainty over fear of deportation is being linked to heightened anxiety and post-traumatic stress, especially for kids in mixed-status homes who say they worry a parent or loved one could be detained at any time, leaving them to pick up the pieces. I spoke with our mental health writer, Bobby Breyer, on Tuesday just before the incident in Edison about the issue and one Red Bank family he followed dealing with the aftermath of deportation. Bobby, good to see you. You spoke with not just mental health professionals, but also people who have been impacted directly by this about the long-term effects. And I wonder what stood out to you the most about how this trauma lingers long after a family member or a loved one has been deported.
That's right. You know, multiple mental health therapists that I spoke to really spoke to this term that they coined intergenerational trauma.
Yeah, what is that?
Intergenerational trauma is essentially untreated trauma from things like separations, deportations, or fear that really kind of ripples down through a family. So say a grandparent maybe faced deportation. If that trauma is not addressed, that oftentimes is passed down to the parent, which is then passed down to the child. A lot of times this may come out in things like emotions or behaviors, or mental health therapists have even said silence, just not even talking about the issue at all. Until that is really addressed, that intergenerational trauma is addressed, that's really when the healing process can start. For a lot of families and children that are experiencing a lot of raids, deportations, or arrests right now, or even the threat of them, they're really looking at issues of intergenerational trauma that will last long after this current administration.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about immigration and this sort of hardline policy from a 30,000-foot level, you might not necessarily connect the mental health component, but you found some really powerful stories.
That's right. You know, I spoke to a young advocate with the American Friends Service Committee, and she is now 21 years old. Her father was deported when she was just 14 years old. What she really told me in recent interviews was that these recent events that she's witnessing are really, unfortunately, kind of her reliving some of the trauma that she's lived through in the past. One of the things that she did speak about, though, were some of the efforts that she is taking along with community organizations to really address some immigration rights and to allow people that they have rights, that they have legal representation that's available to them, and the importance of staying in community as much as possible and to not isolate socially. Oftentimes, those are two keys in order to improve mental health long term.
I want to get to those resources in a bit, but I just want to stay on this for a moment. How does that story, this young woman in particular who you interviewed, Julie Flores Castillo, how does her story mirror what families are going through right now currently with these ramped up ICE raids?
Absolutely. You know, her story is unique in its own sense, but very universal in the same sense, really because, as Julie had spoken about, she comes from a mixed status family, meaning that the immigration status of maybe herself or her parents are different from one another. What that creates for many families is this ongoing fear or uncertainty, a lingering uncertainty that could really cause long-term anxiety and potentially depression, wondering whether something could happen to a loved one or a family member or a friend. even though her story occurred in 2018, this is really what we're seeing playing out across the state and across the country right now for many mixed status families and loved ones.
Okay, so do these communities have enough and the right mental health resources to turn to, especially for the kids?
You know, right now there are certainly resources available. There's places like the American Friends Service Committee that has the Immigrant Rights Program here in Newark. There's also places like Make the Road New Jersey, along with many other organizations and folks working on the ground to really address the mental health impact. But what many advocates and mental health professionals have talked about is this true lack of bilingual therapists who could speak both Spanish and English and have a level of cultural competency that could really address the underlying mental health issues that so many people are facing right now. That lack of bilingual therapists is not just here in New Jersey, but it is nationwide. So that's really a push that we're seeing from mental health professionals to be able to gain more bilingual therapists in order to address some of this ongoing trauma.
All right, you can read Bobby Breyer's reporting on this and more on our website, njspotlightnews.org. Bobby, great reporting. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Brianna.
Well, now that the matchup is set for the gubernatorial race this fall, Democrats in New Jersey and across the country are mounting a full-court press for the 2026 midterms, targeting the state's 7th district, where 5 Democrats are running to oust Republican Tom Kean Jr. from the seat and flip it blue. The centerpiece of their campaign? Well, President Trump's Big Beautiful Bill. Senior correspondent Brenda Flanagan reports.
It got Republican applause, but the president's deeply controversial budget bill's a two-edged political sword. It's given beleaguered Democrats a cohesive message, and they hope some potent campaign firepower as local congressional districts gear up for the next midterm elections. Donald Trump can see the battle lines forming.
Not one Democrat voted for us, and I think we use it in the campaign that's coming up, the midterms, because we got to beat them.
Democrats smell blood in the water. Democrats see a strong midterm environment shaping up for them.
Ryder's Micah Rasmussen points to New Jersey's 7th congressional district and two-term incumbent Tom Kean Jr., who voted for the bill. It's helped make Kean a special target for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, which listed CD7 as one of its 35 Republican-held districts in play, even though Trump carried the 7th by a point last November, according to committee spokesman Eli Cousins.
This is a very purple terrain. This is a district that has swung back and forth in recent years. And so what's different about this time really is the fact that Congressman Kean Jr. has voted for one of the most unpopular and politically toxic bills that we have seen in a very, very long time.
State officials project 350,000 New Jersey residents will likely lose health care under the bill's Medicaid funding cuts, and 400,000 more could see their federal food assistance shrink. The committee's already posted fundraising websites for Democrats in target districts and launched digital attack ads.
You're going to see the best Democratic candidates coming off the bench. They're going to get their tier 1 candidates because the perception is among candidates that this is going to be a good environment for them to run in.
So far, 5 Democrats, including former Small Business Administration official Michael Roth and businessman Brian Varela and former Summit Councilman Greg Vartan, have announced they'll run in next June 7th CD primary. Among the first to declare, pharmaceutical exec Rebecca Bennett. Like Congresswoman and candidate for Governor Mikey Sherrill, Bennett's a U.S. Navy veteran chopper pilot.
Being able to bring that piece of my experience to the table, my experience working in the business sector, working in healthcare, and then also being a mom of 2 kids and understanding the challenges that families are facing.
Bennett went to school on the GI Bill and has connected with vets groups and so far raised close to $1 million in campaign cash.
I don't come from a powerful political family or a wealthy family, but that is a strength for this campaign because I fundamentally understand the challenges that families are facing in a way that I don't think Tom Kean Jr. ever will.
The most recent candidate to join the race, a Jersey-born doctor who served as a medical and veterans advisor in both the Obama and Biden administrations. Wow. Dr. Tina Shah, who raised more than $250,000 the first day of her campaign, calls herself a moderate Democrat.
I've demonstrated that I can work across the aisle, and I think that's what this district wants.
Dr. Shah described treating a diabetic patient who got sick because he rationed his insulin. She fears thousands will suffer from Medicaid cuts.
What we're watching is the active dismantling of U.S. healthcare. We're watching Tom Kean Jr. rubber stamping Trump's agenda. We're watching misinformation spread. And I'm just not willing to sit down anymore. So I'm stepping up as a doctor to restore science and sanity into DC.
But remember, Kean last won re-election by 5 points in the nation's most expensive congressional race. He's raised $970,000 in the first quarter of 2025 alone. His campaign cites his vote for Trump's budget as fully restoring the SALT deduction for every middle-class family, securing our borders, and protecting the integrity of vital safety net programs like Medicaid for their intended beneficiaries. Make no mistake, his political opponents are creating a vulnerability for themselves by advocating for tax hikes and open borders. Both parties will be playing for keeps and control of the Congress. I'm Brenda Flanagan, NJ Spotlight News.
Well, summer in New Jersey means long, hot days and a constant threat of severe weather. Both were in full force yesterday as temperatures pushed into the mid-90s across the state before giving way to thunderstorms. The combination of hot, sunny days and intense rain feeds a lingering problem in the state's lakes and ponds, harmful algal blooms, where toxic bacteria can reach dangerous levels in the water. The blooms can force swimming beaches to close and keep visitors away from towns that depend on tourists being able to enjoy going out in the water. It's become a serious problem in recent years. Correspondent Ted Goldberg has been visiting lakes around North Jersey to check out the situation today, and he joins me now. Ted, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Bree, I'm here at Orange Reservoir, where there's currently no advisory or warning for harmful algal blooms, or HABs. But if you look at the water, there is that distinctive bluish-greenish hue that is so associated with HABs. Although, as a researcher from Montclair tells me, it's not enough to just look at the water and know if it's dangerous.
The results of cyanobacteria concentration can only be obtained through laboratory testing.
Dr. Mei-Yin Wu heads the New Jersey Center for Water Science and Technology at Montclair State, where they study, among other things, HABs.
By eyeballing it, you might see some green color, but you can't really say for sure what are the concentration level.
She says hotter weather and frequent storms are a perfect recipe for HABs to grow, two things climate change has made more intense across the state. Blooms are made of cyanobacteria, a group of bacteria that become dangerous for people and dogs at high concentrations. Measuring the toxicity level for an entire reservoir or lake isn't so simple.
It could be like concentrating more on the shore. However, the next minute, the wind might change the direction, or the paddler can actually ride the paddle boat, create current, and then move the cyanobacteria to another location.
So how much cyanobacteria is too much?
That is actually a very tricky question. Different bacteria produce different type of cyanotoxin. While some can all cause very minor symptoms such as skin irritation, some will actually damage our liver.
When it gets more intense, like it is down at Spruce Run, where there are enough toxins to affect humans just by skin contact, then they really have to close.
Spruce Run Recreation Area used to be a nice spot to swim. But the State Park Service decided this summer to permanently retire this beach after persistent HAB levels over the past 6 years. The Park Service is now looking elsewhere at Spruce Run for swimming options. Elliot Rugo works for the New Jersey Highlands Coalition and says New Jersey's frequent storms have fed into the growth of HABs statewide.
Stormwater washes over road surfaces and golf courses and people's backyards, and they pick up whatever happens to be floating around. And in many cases, that includes fertilizers and herbicides, and those fertilizers have high nutrient value.
One of the sites the DEP has tagged with a HAB advisory is Bud Lake Beach Park, which is closed this summer for major renovations. Andrew Tatarenko is the business administrator for Mount Olive and says the township has hired a lake consultant to manage New Jersey's largest natural spring-fed lake.
Unfortunately, due to the oxygen levels in the lake, they really can't treat it now. because that'll just impact the fishery and potentially kill off a lot of the fish that are there now. You know, the lake is a natural, ecosystem, so it's very complicated to treat.
Ruga says people can reduce HABs by intercepting stormwater before it reaches reservoirs and lakes. Mount Olive has used state and federal grants to upgrade catch basins within the watershed, and Ruga says rain gardens would also be a big help.
And how do you pay for that? There's a bill that passed a couple years ago in the legislature which allows municipalities or groups of municipalities or with counties to form stormwater utilities. In the places where this is most prevalent, say around Lake Apacong and in the Highlands, the legislators are calling it a rain tax and want nothing to do with it.
Dr. Wu says people who go fishing should wash their gear if they're near blue-green algae, and that people should pay close attention to kids who play near it. In Essex County, I'm Ted Goldberg, NJ Spotlight News.
Well, that's going to do it for us tonight. But a reminder, you can download our podcast wherever you listen and watch us anytime by subscribing to the NJ Spotlight News YouTube channel. Plus, you can always follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky to stay up to date on all the state's big headlines. I'm Brianna Venozzi. For the entire team at NJ Spotlight News, thanks for being with us. Have a great night. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.
NJM Insurance Group, serving the insurance needs of residents and businesses for more than 100 years. Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, and by the PSCG Foundation.
For more than a century, New Jersey Realtors has worked to advocate for home ownership and private property rights. Whether it's your home or business, we work on the issues that matter, here in Trenton and in your neighborhood. As the voice for real estate in New Jersey, we support initiatives that safeguard home ownership, strengthen communities, and reinforce our economy. Learn more at njrealtor.com.